The justices, even more liberal-leaning justices, seemed pretty skeptical of Colorado's decision today. But there are a number of questions at play here, including whether what happened on January 6th was indeed insurrection, whether Trump engaged in that insurrection, whether Section 3 of the 14th Amendment even applies to him. Do you view the Supreme Court as likely to actually answer any of those questions, or would they find another way to overturn Colorado?
So I think your instincts are right. The court is likely to overturn the Colorado Supreme Court's decision. And the question is how and what will the ultimate vote be on that decision. I think the court will answer some of those questions. The justices seem most interested in the question as to whether Section 3 of the 14th Amendment that bars people involved in an insurrection from serving in public office, whether that applies to the president, and also whether it's possible for a state to disqualify somebody campaigning for a federal officer, or if the state needs congressional approval first. And I think we're going to get an answer on one of those two questions. I don't know that we're going to get an answer on both of them. And I don't know that we're going to get a definition of insurrection.
That's pretty interesting, actually. I talked about what the outcome might look like with Palm Beach County State Attorney Dave Ehrenberg a little bit earlier, and he sees the court punting on this. Tara, here's how he put it.
In the end, they will probably say that the 14th Amendment is self-executing, meaning you don't need Congress to make it happen. There is still Section 5 of the 14th Amendment, which says that Congress shall enforce this section. So what I think the court's going to do is they're going to punt, and they're going to say, hey, Congress, do your job. Pass some uniform laws so we don't have 50 different states going in 50 different directions.
What would be the impact of such a ruling?
So what was interesting about the argument today is the Supreme Court seemed to want to split the baby and say it's still possible for states to disqualify people running for state offices and local offices who have engaged in or alleged to have engaged in insurrection, but not people who are running for federal offices. So I think we may get it's a situation where Congress needs to pass legislation for part of the amendment, and something I didn't expect, actually.
Tara, I was actually at the Supreme Court briefly today outside, where there were not that many people protesting in support of the former president, but several holding signs of the like that say remove Trump or calling him a traitor. There were also a number of people out there protesting specifically about Justice Clarence Thomas, calling for his recusal in this case, given his wife, Ginny Thomas, and the role that she played in efforts to overturn the 2020 election. He was participating in these oral arguments, asking questions pretty much right out of the gate. What does that signal to you about his willingness to recuse himself, not just in this case, but any case pertaining to the former president or the 2020 election going forward?
Right. So the justices, the recusal approach of the justices is not something that necessarily mirrors the rest of the federal judiciary. Supreme Court justices are very reluctant to recuse from any case unless they, for example, have a personal financial interest in one of the parties. And I think we've already seen from Justice Thomas that he is happy to sit on a variety of cases involving the 2020 election. He has already done so. And so I don't think most legal observers thought that he would stay away from this particular case. I'll also say Justice Thomas now has a habit of asking the first question or one of the first questions in every single oral argument. So his conduct in this case was actually the same as what he's been doing in every Supreme Court case since he started asking questions regularly.
To ask you about this Department of Justice report today on Joe Biden, not Donald Trump, when it comes to mishandling of classified documents. Of course, Donald Trump is dealing with his own indictment on that. But President Biden was found by the special counsel to have knowingly kept and stored classified information and, in fact, not only willfully retained the documents, according to this, but disclosed materials after his vice presidency when he was a private citizen. Yet no charges. How come?
So I think that one of the things the government has often done in these cases is say, okay, people make mistakes. They shouldn't make mistakes when it comes to classified documents. But when we tell them about the mistakes, are they cooperative or not? And my understanding is that President Biden has been reasonably cooperative since he figured out he had these classified documents. And so I think the approach here, it strikes me as not that strange. If you tell someone, hey, you messed up, and they say, oh gosh, I'm sorry, how can I fix it? It doesn't surprise me that the special counsel said, okay, in this context, we're not going to file charges.
But doesn't the word willfully indicate that he knew he was doing something wrong? Or am I not reading that right?
So, fair point. I think that one can make a mistake. You may willfully have the documents, but not quite realize what they are or what they mean. But fair enough. He was not willfully holding on to them, it seems, but fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you listen to what the former President Donald Trump has to say about this, he says this is now proven to be a two-tiered system of justice and unconstitutional selective prosecution. Tara, can you not understand, for someone who is sympathetic to the former president's argument, that he's being targeted by the justice system when he was charged with multiple felonies for also mishandling willfully classified documents, that there were no charges at all brought here? I mean, is willing to cooperate absolution of doing any crime being held accountable for it?
So I think that in our society today, every single person, when they look at any legal proceeding, looks at that legal proceeding from their own perspective. And right now, our society is very driven by ideological perspective. So people have their own ideological perspective and tend to be more trusting of litigants that they tend to favor, and tend to be more trusting of the government when it's run by someone that they politically support. And I think that's the lens through which many people view the system. There are people who have looked at both of these cases much more carefully than I have. But one thing that I do believe is the case is that when the government approached President Trump, he did not willingly hand back the documents or invite investigators in to check out what he had. And to the extent that's the case, that would be a big difference between these two situations.